In this video, we're going to explore one of history's most enigmatic architects, Albert Speer, Hitler's architect. His designs define the Third Reich. His legacy is one of the most debated in modern history. From towering monuments to Nazi ambition to Jewish concentration camps, Speer designed them all. For a time, Speer was the most powerful architect in the world, perhaps the most powerful architect who ever lived. But at the Nuremberg trials, he faced reckoning for his crimes against humanity. When I was in architecture school, we had to study the German architect Karl Friedrich Schinkel. He was a neoclassical architect of the 1800s. From him, I got the idea of a style I called stripped down or abstracted classical, which was a combination of modern abstraction with classical architecture. At the time, I was entering an architectural competition. When I showed my teacher the competition entry, she told me it looked like Nazi architecture. Horrified, I asked her why. She told me it looked like the work of Albert Speer. Not knowing who Speer was, I researched the architect. This led me down a rabbit hole of Speer and his life. Albert Speer was born in March 19, 1905, in Mannheim, Germany, into a well-off family. As a young man, he was reserved, ambitious, and undeniably talented. He studied architecture under Heinrich Tessenow, a respected German architect, and by his mid-20s, Speer was already making a name for himself. But it wasn't until 1931 that his life took a dramatic turn. That year, he joined the Nazi Party, not out of deep ideology, he later claimed, but because he saw opportunity. Speer's big break came in 1933 when he was tasked with designing the Nuremberg rally grounds. His work caught the eye of Adolf Hitler, a man obsessed with architecture as a tool of power. Speer's designs were bold, massive stages, dramatic lighting, and a sense of overwhelming scale. The Cathedral of Light, where 130 searchlights pierced the night sky, became an iconic image of Nazi propaganda. It was theatrical, awe-inspiring, and exactly what Hitler wanted. Speer used an abstracted neoclassicism to exemplify the power and grandeur of the Third Reich. Speer's architecture was based on the abstraction of classical and Roman architectural forms. In 1937, Speer was named General Building Inspector for the Reich capital. His most ambitious project was Germania, a reimagined Berlin meant to be the capital of a 1,000-year Reich. Think colossal domes and a great hall that could hold 180,000 people. It was architecture as ideology, meant to dwarf humanity and cement Nazi dominance.
And so the centerpieces, this big dome and the Arc of Triumph, were the beginning and the end, in the perspective, the end of a big avenue which had width of 120 meters, much more than the Champs-Élysées in Paris.
But as the war loomed, much of Germania remained unbuilt, a dream etched in blueprints rather than in stone. Speer became one of Hitler's closest confidants. The two shared a passion for architecture. Hitler saw Speer as a kindred spirit, calling him a frustrated architect like me. Speer was captivated by Hitler's charisma and vision. It was a partnership that would define both men. In 1942, Speer's role expanded beyond architecture. Hitler appointed him Minister of Armaments and War Production. Speer was tasked with keeping the Nazi war machine running. He was ruthlessly efficient, centralizing production, streamlining resources, and boosting output despite Allied bombings. Under his watch, German factories churned out tanks, planes, and weapons at staggering rates. Some called it a miracle, but there was a cost. Speer's miracle relied heavily on forced labor. Millions of prisoners, concentration camp inmates, and enslaved workers. He later claimed he didn't know the full extent of the horrors, but evidence suggests he was deeply involved.
und Munition Albert Speer und Reichsorganisationsleiter Dr. Ley. Reichsminister Speer spricht. In seiner Rede stellte er fest: Die Frühjahrslieferungen sind beendet. Sie rollen in ungeahnten Massen zur Front.
His ministry requested labor from the SS, and he visited sites where autocracies were plain to see. Speer wasn't building Hitler's dream, he was creating a nightmare. As the war turned against Germany, Speer's loyalty to Hitler wavered. In 1945, when Hitler ordered a scorched earth policy to destroy Germany's infrastructure, Speer quietly defied him, preserving factories and resources for a post-war future. It was a gamble, one that would soon land him in the spotlight of justice. After Germany's surrender in May 1945, Speer was captured by the Allies and put on trial at Nuremberg alongside other top Nazi leaders. Unlike his peers, Speer didn't deny everything. Instead, he took a calculated approach, admitting collective responsibility while distancing himself from the worst autocracies.
Und der Zusammenbruch seines Systems haben eine ungeheure Leidenszeit über das deutsche Volk gebracht. Die nutzlose Fortsetzung dieses Krieges und die unnötigen Zerstörungen erschweren den Wiederaufbau. Entbehrungen und Elend sind über das deutsche Volk gekommen. Es wird nach diesem Prozess Hitler als den erwiesenen Urheber seines Unglücks verachten und verdammen. Die Welt aber wird aus dem Geschehen lernen, die Diktatur als Staatsform nicht nur zu hassen, sondern zu fürchten.
It was a masterful performance, contrite, polished, and just vague enough to avoid the gallows. While men like Göring and Himmler faced death sentences, Speer argued he was merely a technocrat, not a monster. The evidence was damning. Speer's ministry had overseen the exploitation of millions. Forced laborers worked to death in horrific conditions. He'd attended meetings where the Holocaust was discussed, and his signature was on documents tying him to the SS labor supply. Prosecutors painted him as a key cog in the Nazi war machine, complicit in its crimes against humanity. In 1946, Speer was found guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity. But instead of execution, Speer was sentenced to 20 years in Spandau prison. Many saw this as lenient punishment for a man so deeply involved. He served his full term, released in 1966, and spent his later years writing memoirs like Inside the Third Reich, books that shaped his image as the good Nazi, a label historians still debate. Speer died in 1981, leaving behind a complex legacy, a genius architect, loyal servant to Hitler, and a figure who escaped the ultimate price for his role in the Jewish Holocaust. What I learned from the story about Speer is that architects have a moral responsibility, not only to their clients, but also to the people who inhabit the built environment, and to the greater community and civilization at large. Speer, at the Nuremberg trials, argued that as an architect, he was not taught ethics or deeper moral principles. He stated, "I was not educated to think, only to follow orders and meet the requirements of clients." He says in 1945, "I was a technocrat. I was educated to think in my environment, not to think in general. In school, we were obliged to learn our lessons, but there was no discussion about the problems of politics. We were almost shunned away from those problems, and we were not prepared to think thoroughly about a man like Hitler when he came." Of course, this statement is a lie. Speer knew full well he was using forced labor in the concentration camps, and this was completely unethical. But this brings up a bigger issue. Architects are technocrats, one of the many types of technocrats that exist in modern government. When we look back on World War II and try to learn the lessons of Nazi evil and how to spot and stop that evil today, we shouldn't focus on leaders like Hitler. The cult of personality only goes so far. The real issue is in modern government, technocrats control the world. They're the ones holding the real power. We think elected officials control government and that we live in democracies, but this only goes so far. In fact, unelected technocrats control how policies are implemented. They can do good, but they can also implement evil on a grand scale. The story of Albert Speer teaches us that architects need to have a value system and a code of ethics, and not just blindly follow the wants of our clients. The ethical responsibility of architects is to advocate for the people who lived in the built environments that we create. Part of the problem is Americans have little understanding of architectural history. As a result, we can be tricked into almost anything. Philip Johnson, when designing the International Place high-rise building in Boston, got into a dispute with his client, calling him a Nazi. To get back at him, he designed the lobby of the building, copying the marble motifs of Speer's New Reich Chancellery in Berlin. This was Hitler's official residence and administration headquarters. Johnson turned the lobby into an inside joke that only architects would understand, a critique of capitalists as the new Nazis. American lack of understanding of architectural history doesn't stop there. The World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C. uses a type of abstracted classicism that could have come straight from Speer. It consists of granite pillars and is decorated with bronze laurel wreaths. The World War II Memorial is a direct copy of Speer's German pavilion at the Paris International Exposition in 1937. Here, 3 giant pillars support a Nazi eagle, wreath, and swastika. Above the doors are additional bronze wreaths. Unlike Philip Johnson, who used Speer's Nazi architecture ironically, the many hundreds of people who approved this design had no idea it was Nazi architecture. A few days ago, as of this writing, President Donald Trump mandated the executive order that classical architecture must be used for all federal buildings. Although classical architecture was used by the founding fathers like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson to symbolize ancient Greek and Roman democracy and civil virtue, today after Speer, it also has a second, more sinister connotation, that of Nazi architecture. What do you think? Did Speer deserve harsher punishment, or was he truly a man caught in the tide of history? Should we abandon classical architecture or use it in our public buildings? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'm Jamie Roberts. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe.